Envision a life where you're trained to be one of the 7 greatest sorcerers of your time, all striving to carve out a brighter future. But when tragedy strikes, you're asked to reintegrate into society and live an ordinary school life whilst concealing your powers. Kicking off the series, we follow our MC, Ray White, but being his first day at Arnold Academy of Sorcery, Ray bumps into Erica Wanda. Having managed to catch Erica, Ray manages to charm Erica, apologizing since he seems to be lost. Lakis Samurd whispers to Gerald Yamamaru that rumors of an ordinary student neither from an aristocrat nor wealthy family is joining their school, the first since the academy has opened. Hearing it's Ray, Erica pulls away from Ray disgusted, only for Albert Allium and his group to confront Ray. Albert reminds Ray that only nobles are to attend their prestigious academy. When Albert orders Ray to leave the academy, Ray states he has the right to study alongside everyone. But as Albert reaches for Ray, Ray sidesteps Albert. Before Albert can escalate the fight, Amelia Rose orders for Albert to stop, immediately attracting lots of attention, seeing as Amelia belongs to one of the top 3 noble families. As Albert leaves, Amelia chooses to check on Ray, formally greeting each other, but Amelia wonders how spectacular Ray is to be the first ordinary to be allowed to study with nobles. Regardless, Amelia asks to get along with Ray moving forward, cutting to the entrance ceremony where Principal Abby Garnett reminds her students that they've all been accepted due to their exceptional skills in sorcery. With a fiery exit, Abby allows Amelia to give a speech, seeing as Amelia is the representative for their grade. As Amelia rallies her peers to study and work hard in the coming years together, we follow Ray being introduced to his first class, prompting most students to glare at the ordinary that is joining their class. Starting the class, Instructor Helena Grady asks Ray to take a seat, choosing to sit by the classroom's window. But as Ray looks out the window, he's reminded of a more desolate-looking town. Before Ray can reminisce too long, Helena tosses an exploding chalk at Ray, ordering Ray to focus whilst in class. Helena calls for Amelia to recite how sorcerers are ranked, all hearing that there are 5 ranks that dictate Sorcerer Society, these being bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and grand. Helena reminds everyone that only 7 sorcerers have acquired the grand rank, but sadly a lot is still unknown about most of them. Luckily, public records show that Principal Abby is one of 7 grand sorcerers, having been given the title of Blaze Sorcerer. Next is Carol Caroline, the spell-binding sorcerer, but Carol mainly focuses on researching spells. Sadly, Helena says the hero from the Far East War, the Iceblade Sorcerer, along with the remaining Grand Sorcerers, have no public records. When Helena orders her students to strive to be a Grand Sorcerer, Albert speaks up, questioning the validity of having an ordinary strive for the Grand title, but Helena silences her students, reminding everyone that only the most qualified could have entered their academy. This, of course, includes Ray. Moving to a practical room, Helena starts by reteaching the fundamentals, asking Amelia to describe what sorcery is. Amelia states that sorcery allows for the reconstruction of prima materia, the primary building blocks of their world. Additionally, Helena adds that sorcery requires code theory, allowing for sorcerers to compress and refine a spell by encoding and decoding, only to manifest it, leading Helena to show off some newly created ice roses only to shatter them. Amelia asks if what they create is limited, but Helena says they can create anything as long as the object created is a solid, liquid, gas, or plasma. As for anything else, they're considered a phenomena, something that amazes the students. But just then a hooded student in the back asks if Helena had used anti-magic when she destroyed the ice roses earlier. Sadly, Helena states that anti-magic has never been accomplished by sorcerers, plus the topic is way too advanced. As the class starts, we see Amelia easily encodes and decodes her magic, showing off a gorgeous rose. But as for Ray, he seems to be struggling to perform the most basic of spells, infuriating Albert as he refuses to accept Ray as one of his peers. Later that day, Ray explores the academy, suddenly spotting a classmate entering the library only to ask the hooded student from earlier if they were looking for books on anti-magic. Introducing herself as Elisa Griffith, Ray helps Elisa find books written by Ainsworth, a role model Elisa looks up to, seeing as Dr. Ainsworth is one of the top-ranking researchers of sorcery. Elisa asks if Ray likes Ainsworth's works as well, jumping out of her chair when she hears Ray loves Ainsworth's as well. But before Elisa can cover her gorgeous hair, Ray asks why Elisa is hiding her beauty. Elisa utters that her sharp ears had caused bullying in the past, having been birthed by an elf mother and human father, making Elisa a half-elf. Ray reassures Elisa that her ears are fine, making Elisa blush. But as the two depart for the day, Ray heads to a shared dorm room, greeting Evie Armstrong. But when the two boys greet each other, Evie immediately accepts Ray as a brother, seeing as they both train and take care of their bodies. The next morning, Ray goes on a morning jog, running into Rebecca Bradley, a third-year student who has heard Ray is the first ordinary at their academy. As Evie and Ray walk to school, Ray is surprised to hear Rebecca is also from one of the top 3 royal families, learning that Rose, Bradley, and Algren are the 3 noble family names. Evie states that the royal families have massive influence over the country, but seeing as Amelia is the firstborn of her family, she is quite high up in terms of influence. With Evie and Ray agreeing to meet up for their swordsmanship class later in the day, Ray turns a corner, suddenly bumping into Clarice Cleveland. Clarice is annoyed that Ray didn't move out of the way when she was clearly running through the hallways, but Ray charms his way out of a fight by admiring Clarice's pigtails. Ray apologizes for not knowing more about Clarice's family, but seeing as they both need to head somewhere, they promise to talk again soon, only for Ray to head to the principal's office. Greeting Abby as Colonel, Abby reminds Ray they're both retired, asking Ray to be more nonchalant, only for Abby to think back on their time together in the past. That evening, Ray and Albert seem to be matched up for a duel, but as the crowd cries for the Withered Wizard to lose, Amelia learns that Ray had been given the title of Withered Wizard due to his ordinary status. As the duel starts, Albert rushes in for a strike, but Ray nonchalantly parries Albert's wooden sword. Getting annoyed, Albert tries a thrust attack, but in an instant Ray counters with a thrust of his own, instantly shattering Albert's blade, ending the duel in Ray's favor. Working out at night, Ray and Evie push each other to grow stronger, but when Evie hears that Ray has joined 2 clubs, Ray reassures Evie he'll be fine, showing off a mysterious golden item. The next day, Ray enters a steamy room filled with muscular men, only to be greeted by Rex Hale, who reminds Ray that this is their environmental research club. Evie, along with the club members, cry that their club is only for people that want to explore different terrains and are given the title of hunters. But before Ray is accepted into the club, Ray unveils his masculine body, gaining the approval of everyone when Ray also flexes his Golden Hunters card. With Ray being accepted as a pillar of the environmental club, we cut to Ray entering a room filled with Rebecca and a bunch of ladies. Ray states he wants to join their gardening club, having an interest in different plants and their resilience to grow anywhere. But before Rebecca can accept Ray as their first male member, third-year student Dina Sarah interjects, accusing Ray of joining their club only to get close to Rebecca. Coming up with a solution, Rebecca asks Dina to test Ray, prompting Dina to take Ray to a grass-filled rooftop. Seeing as the batch of grass is filled with weeds, Dina says Ray is to transform the patch of grass in a week, doubting Ray will be able to make any progress. During the first day, Ray gets to work pulling out the weeds and removing the grass. In the next couple of days, Ray softens the soil and sets up zones to begin planting seeds. Seeing Ray's hard work, Rebecca visits Ray on day 3, handing Ray her favorite fruit sandwiches, whispering that she had special access to the sandwiches since she is the student council president. Before the two can flirt some more, they suddenly hear swords clashing, peeking over the rooftop only to see 2 students training for the upcoming Magic Chevalier, a tournament that decides the strongest magic sword fighter. As Ray ponders if he should join, Rebecca can't help but admire Ray's muscular body, asking for permission to touch Ray's body only to appreciate the hard work he put into his muscles. With day 4 arriving, Dina is amazed to see Ray was able to transform the rooftop, officially accepting Ray as their new member. As Ray heads home for the day, we flash back to Principal Abby informing Ray that a spy from the Empire has snuck into their school, asking Ray to be on the lookout seeing as things are getting hectic. On his way home, Ray spots Clarice knelt down, but when Ray asks what Clarice is looking at, Clarice shyly utters that she is observing some bugs. Clarice reveals that she is the only noble girl that has fascination with bugs, something Ray says he is interested in as well, surprising Clarice as she has finally found a friend that shares her interests. Seeing as it's getting late, Clarice and Ray agree to chat some more, something Clarice excitedly looks forward to doing as she's made her first friend. The next day, Ray is called to explain the types of magic in class, reciting that magic can be classified in a low, high, mid, and holy grade. As for types of cast, there are quick, remote, chain, delay, material shift, extensive, and extensive chain. With Helena confirming that Ray is correct, the entire class is amazed at Ray's knowledge. But before class ends, Helena reminds everyone that their next practical class will be in the Kafka forest, asking the students to form groups of 4. With Amelia being swarmed by offers, we see Evie and Ray agree to team up, prompting Ray to ask Elisa, charming her as to boost Elisa's self-esteem. As Ray looks for their 4th member, surprisingly Amelia asks to join their group, cutting to the day of the practical exercise where Helena goes over the rules. Setting the center of the forest as their final destination, Helena asks her students to visit the checkpoints assigned to them, giving everyone 24 hours to finish the exercise. Helena also reminds everyone to be careful of monsters in the Kafka forest, only to send the groups off to their designated zones. With Amelia calming Elisa's nerves, Evie hears that Ray grew up in the countryside and is used to playing in forests and mountains, prompting Amelia to assign Ray and Evie as the vanguard, Amelia herself as the midguard, and Elisa in the rear. Sadly, Ray says he specializes in the midguard, asking Amelia to switch positions with him. But as the exercise begins, Ray and his party begin heading through the forest. As the gang take breaks between their travels, we see Elisa take note of a monster nearby. But before Evie and Amelia can ready their weapons, Ray instantly slices the creature in 2, shocking everyone. As Ray and his party reach their first checkpoint, they acquire their first stamp, but as the other groups make their way through the forest as well, night begins to fall. Setting up camp, Ray is praised for his high-class hunter skills, something that gets Amelia suspicious. But Evie points out how brilliant Amelia herself is, having accepted Ray as an equal even though she is a noble. Amelia admits she had always despised the bloodline and class stuff, uttering that she regrets putting in so much work to be where she is today, but reassures everyone that she is more than happy to spend her time with others that treat her as equals. When Evie utters that they're counting on Ray, Ray suddenly gets flashbacks of a battlefield in his past, but the gang snap Ray out of his daze, all choosing to head to bed. As Ray stands guard, he remembers his master's words, advising Ray to conceal his past and live a normal life. But Ray's master does suggest Ray surrounds himself with friends that he can trust his past with. The next day, whilst the gang are heading through the forest, they suddenly hear a scream from afar, triggering Ray's battle senses as he rushes towards the source of scream. Spotting Albert and his party facing a monster, Ray enchants his movements with a speed buff, dashing past the monster's projectiles only to leap into the air, plunging his sword into the monster's head. Having slain the creature with a single strike, Albert is in awe of Ray's movements. But when Ray checks on Albert, Albert brushes aside Ray's help, refusing to accept an ordinary had saved their lives. As the others catch up, Evie and Elisa help free Albert's binded teammates. But when Amelia sees the monster Ray slayed, she demands to know who Ray is. At the same time, we see a hooded figure tossing an item into the monster's corpse, resurrecting it with a darker hue. As the monster unhinges its jaw, it lets out a terrifying roar, a noise that catches Claris's attention as well. When Ray tries another aerial slash, the monster easily tanks the blow, countering with a slash of its own that forces Ray to defend. When Ray prepares to unleash some of his true power, a sudden burst of fire separates Ray and the creature, revealed to be the work of Amelia, as Evie and Elisa also assist by blasting a rock towards the monster. Giving Ray an opening, Ray blinks in for the killing blow, this time slicing the monster completely in half. But as Albert glares at Ray, Ray notes the strange monster he just faced. As Ray's party celebrates the kill, Ray sees his former team in them. But as Albert heads over to free his party, we see Claris fangirling over Ray, all whilst the hooded figure disappears. Having acquired all the stamps to pass the exercise, Elisa apologizes for having Ray carry her. But Ray reassures Elisa that it's fine, prompting Amelia to adore Elisa. Wrapping up the exam, Ray and his party are announced to be the first ranking group, garnering glares from his peers as everyone believes Ray was carried by Amelia. With Albert especially pissed at Ray, we cut to Ray's master, Lydia Ainsworth, awaiting Ray's visit, reminded by her maid Clara Hale that it's been 3 months since Ray had visited. As Clara heads to fetch Ray, Ray warmly greets Clara, heading inside only to see Lydia has been waiting for him. With the two sitting down, Lydia notes how Ray's marking has yet to manifest, reminding Ray to use his power when he deems necessary, especially since Lydia had passed down the title of Iceblade Sorcerer to Ray. Lydia brings up some rumors about engrams she has heard, reminding Ray that the brain is essential to conjuring spells, and it was her delicate attention when studying the brain that allowed her to discover two-fold code theory. Lydia utters that the location in the brain where memories and sorcery is stored is known as the engram. Sadly, Lydia has taken note of people that will forcibly experiment on humans to get what they want, people known as eugenics. Having burned up a letter that was sent to her from the eugenics, Lydia utters that Carol had also refused to join these despicable people, but needing a change of scenery, Ray helps Lydia through a nearby forest. Reminiscing on their times together in the Ainsworth boot camp, Lydia praises Ray for passing her boot camp when he was merely a child, leading Ray to mention how he's made several friends at the academy, especially one that loves Lydia's Ainsworth books. With Lydia asking Ray to invite his friends over the next time, Lydia and Ray stop in front of a massive tree, only for Lydia to remind Ray that the Magic Chevalier held between the kingdom's 3 sorcery academies will start soon. Lydia admits that she had won the tournament 4 times in a row, something Ray has no interest in, wanting a peaceful life. But before Ray leaves for the day, Lydia gives Ray a book she had written specifically for Ray. The next day, we see Elisa heading out, only to catch a whiff of Ray on his morning jog. Hearing that Elisa is visiting the library and bookstore in the Middle District, Ray asks to accompany her, flustering Elisa as they both get changed for their first possible date. Heading to the library first, Elisa picks out another of Ainsworth's books, one of her first books detailing research on engrams. But as the duo sit down to read, Elisa asks what Ray is reading. Upon seeing that Ray is reading a love novel by Luna Ether, Elisa is surprised as Ray mentions how he struggles to feel emotions at times, and reading helps him discover himself. Outside the library, we see Clarice spying on our duo, hesitating to approach them, but out of nowhere Ray asks if Clarice would like to join them. Taking Ray up on his offer, the trio sit down for lunch, prompting Ray to boldly list off both girls' personalities whilst introducing them to each other, something that makes the girls blush. Enjoying lunch together, the girls depart together having bonded over lunch, but as Ray turns to head back to his dorm, he spots Amelia being dropped off at school as well. Running over to greet her, Ray hears that Amelia had been meeting with other nobles since the Magic Chevalier is coming up, but Amelia apologizes for venting her frustrations onto Ray. Sitting down, Ray tells Amelia about his lunch date with Elisa and Clarice, making Amelia jealous as she demands that Ray go shopping with her as well. Trying on some new dresses, Amelia shows them off to Ray, garnering lots of praise from Ray, but Amelia wonders why Ray is so easygoing with girls. Relieved to hear Ray grew up mainly around girls, but out of nowhere a spider appears in front of Amelia, scaring her out of the changing room. Seeing as she is basically naked, Amelia apologizes for clinging on to Ray, rushing back in her changing room. But having already shown so much to Ray, Amelia wonders if she can show Ray her true self. That evening at the academy, Ray sits down with Helena, who checks on Ray's life since he's come to school. Relieved to see Ray is doing fine, but Helena admits the discrimination against ordinaries is still something that needs to be solved. Professor Helena admits that she has been teaching for several years and has watched several students get expelled due to her incompetence as a teacher. But wanting to make a change, Helena states she'll strive to do better, asking Ray to rely on her whenever he needs help. That night, we see Albert training hard to prove his worth as a noble. But as Albert continues to curse at Ray, we see the hooded figure observing Albert's frustrations. In the coming days, Ray continues to train his body with his fellow hunters, only to pick up a key to the garden club from Dina. Choosing to check out the club room, Ray accidentally stumbles onto Rebecca changing, swiftly leaving the room as he apologizes. Breaking the tension, Rebecca serves Ray some tea, only to explain she was changing in their spare room, having just finished gym. But as they change the topic, Rebecca shows a book detailing several plants exclusive to the gardening club. Ray learns that Rebecca's specifically records plants that perform sorcery, both heading outside as Rebecca shows off a carnivorous plant along with mentioning how most carnivorous plants can perform sorcery. Rebecca points out how it's great to be showing off her work to someone, explaining how since she's from one of the three great families, all the club members refuse to get close to her. Seeing as Ray is an exception, Rebecca hopes to chat with Ray about more of her plant findings, even lending Ray records of the plants the club has studied up till now. That evening, Rebecca hears that Ray will be helping organize the Magic Chevalier. Surprised Ray will be cheering Amelia on seeing as she is the favored rookie this year. Ray takes the chance to ask if anyone from the third grade family is attending, hearing that the representative is a fitting rival for Amelia, being the head of her family whilst attending Dime Academy. The next day, we see Amelia working hard to polish her swordplay, easily defeating Xena Shaq only to ask Professor Elliot if she can try sparring Ray. Although Ray isn't participating in the tournament, he accepts Amelia's challenge, both starting their duel only for Ray to note Amelia's fast and precise strikes. Amelia admits that she has been awed ever since she saw Ray fighting in their forest exercise, both choosing to enjoy their duel. But as Ray remembers his time training in his past, he instinctively parries and prepares to strike Amelia down, but luckily stops himself only to concede the duel. With Amelia deemed the winner, Amelia knows that Ray was holding back, but later that day for lunch, Ray mentions to his friends that he's so strong all thanks to his master. Before the gang can ask more about Ray's past, Albert interrupts, challenging Ray to a duel. Happy to accept, the two men head to a secluded area, concealed with a noise-dampening barrier. With Albert announcing that they'll use real swords and sorcery is permitted, Albert rushes to cleave at Ray, forcing Ray to roll away to dodge, but Albert seems to be emitting a strange aura. At the same time, we see the Hooded admiring their match, all whilst Albert continues to get more worked up, refusing to lose to an ordinary. It's revealed that Albert's noble family was quite low in terms of status. Therefore, Albert swore to raise his family's name and status, declaring Ray as his first obstacle. Swapping over to using magic, Albert fires off a spell at Ray, but surprisingly, Ray severs the spell into two, shocking everyone. Amping up his output, Albert fires volleys of fireballs attempting to harm Ray, but having dodged and cut most of the spells, Albert accuses Ray of cheating. Ray sadly admits that he was born ordinary and trained to be exceptional, pissing Albert off as he conjures an extensive spell, only to aim a fiery dragon at Ray. Focusing in, Ray cuts down the fire dragon, completely demoralizing Albert as he admits he is worthless when compared to Ray. When Ray returns to his party, he prepares to reveal who he truly is, but out of nowhere, a spell binds everyone, bringing them all to the ground. With Ray being the only one able to withstand the spell, we see the hooded figure praise Ray's skills, declaring they'll all be sacrificed for the better of sorcery. With the hooded figure revealing herself to be Professor Helena, Ray immediately switches moods, revealing that he knows Helena is part of eugenics. Ray utters that the students Helena had failed was because she needed their engrams for her experiments, something Helena doesn't deny, all watching as Helena flashes her strange eye. Ray points out the monster they encountered in the Kafka forest must also be Helena's doing, seeing as the monster could retrieve more test subjects for Helena. But having stalled long enough, Helena reveals that Albert was also used to help her erect the noise-dampening barrier that also weakens the student's powers. Seeing Helena's personality as a professor was all a lie, Ray prepares to cut down Helena. But knowing that Ray specializes in close-quarter combat, Helena leaps back only to unveil two fiery snake spells. Forced to evade the snake's advances, Helena taunts Ray by sending the fiery snakes after his friends. But seeing as he can no longer hold back, Ray releases his true power. In an instant, several ice pillars block the fire spells, only for Ray to call forth several ice swords. Recognizing the magic to belong to the Ice Blade Sorcerer, Helena demands to know who Ray is, hearing that the previous Ice Blade Sorcerer had passed down their powers to Ray himself. Refusing to hear such nonsense, Helena fires off a projectile only for it to be dispersed by Ray's Ice Blade. Unveiling a dark sphere of magic, Helena orders for Ray to give up, but Ray activates another trump card, negating Helena's magic with his anti-magic. Seeing as there is no way she can face the Ice Blade Sorcerer, Helena opts to flee, but Ray catches her by puncturing her legs. Begging for her life, Helena offers to give Ray the role of a leader in their eugenics group. But when Helena tries to catch Ray off guard with a pillar of flames, she's horrified to see her platinum status as a sorcerer doesn't compare to Ray's Grand Sorcerer status. Before Ray can officially capture Helena, Helena states she must give her all to escape, taking out a needle only to inject it into her brain. In mere moments, Helena begins morphing into a terrifying creature, sprouting limbs only to completely shed her humanity for a new body. As the surrounding barrier begins to dissipate, we see Ray and Helena exchanging strikes. But when Helena attempts to swarm Ray with fire pillars, Ray simply dispels them all. Seeing Ray ready several more ice blades, Helena demands to know why Ray is toying with her, attempting to fire off another fireball, but Ray simply slows down the projectile only to dispel it. Quizzing Helena, Ray asks what the difference between ice and fire magic is, confirming that both types of magic have different spells and encodings, but Ray has mastered the requirements to create any spell to a point where he can identify any spell he sees and reverse engineer the spell's encoding to delete it, something known as anti-magic. With Helena still refusing to believe someone has figured out anti-magic, Helena notices Ray suddenly bleeding from the head, choosing to unleash several specters that Amelia and Elisa recognize as mind infiltration magic. Identifying the spells Helena is attacking with, Ray begins dispelling Helena's attacks, but seeing Ray's body freezing over, Helena continues to press Ray with attacks, realizing that Ray's powers are slowly killing him. Seeing Helena wide open, Ray consumes Helena with an ice tornado, freezing her over only to signify her death with some ice roses. Deactivating his powers, Ray sees that his friends are all right, falling to his knees as he suddenly collapses. Flashing back, we see a younger Ray being carried to safety by Lydia, meeting up with Abby and Carol. Seeing as Lydia is annoyed, Carol runs to hide behind Henrik Fahrenheit, who asks who the child is, hearing that Lydia had rescued Ray, seeing as he was the only survivor in his village. Later that day, Lydia is pissed to hear that they can't take Ray with them, seeing as his village isn't in the jurisdiction of their country. But before Lydia leaves, Abby reminds Lydia that the country Ray was born in was supposedly cursed. Cutting over to Ray, we see Carol tending to his wounds, but seeing Ray lifeless, Lydia asks if Ray would like to play ball with her. Sadly, Carol has already got Ray reading picture books with her, both fighting over who gets to spend time with Ray. Later that night, Lydia and Abby discuss whether they'll be keeping Ray with them. But the next morning, Carol refuses to leave Ray behind, stating that she'll personally tend to Ray's well-being. Before Henrik can ask for everyone's opinion, Ray runs into their meeting, asking to stay with Lydia, something that touches Lydia's heart. Coming up with a solution, Lydia says she, along with Abby and Carol, will look after Ray, something Henrik accepts as long as Lydia continues to fulfill her duties. With Ray given a new home and Lydia deemed his new master, we cut to 6 years later, where we follow Ray fighting in the Far East War on the front lines of Mirth. Howard Kennett and Delk Armstrong are seen looking after Ray, all retreating when they finish up their duties for the Arnold Kingdom. But as we follow Flor Corrine, Lydia, and Abby, they all stumble onto the exhausted corpses of sorcerers abusing their bodies. Reporting that night, the team hear that Grand Sorcerers Kanpiki and Raime had passed away during battle, horrifying the team. Hendrickson states that although they're astrals, they're to stay vigilant moving forward. But when Corrine asks if Ray is okay with continuing in the war, Ray states he'll fight by his family until the very end. Unfortunately, in their next mission, Ray was forced to watch Howard perish before him, but before Ray could relive any more of his past, he suddenly awakens in the present. Seeing Lydia, Abby, and Carla by his side, Ray apologizes for using his powers, but Abby states that Ray used his powers to save his friends, something Abby commends Ray for doing. As Lydia pats Ray's head for a job well done, she asks Ray to visit her again sometime soon. But before Carla leaves, she reveals that Lydia was worried sick about Ray. Now alone, Abby admits that she wasn't too fond of Ray joining her academy, especially since nobles discriminating against non-nobles was very common. Surprisingly, Lydia had begged Abby to accept Ray as a student, seeing as she knew Ray needed to live and grow with others his age and leave his war-torn past, shocking Ray as Lydia had done so much for him. As Lydia and Carla leave, they pass by Amelia and the others. But when Lydia exits the school, she breaks down crying, having to act strong whilst in front of Ray. Abby asks Ray not to waste the opportunity he's been given by Lydia, making Ray break down crying. But as Abby leaves the room, she allows Amelia and the others to finally see Ray. When Ray's party comes to check up on him, Ray reveals that he is indeed one of the 7 Grand Sorcerers, the Ice Blade Sorcerer to be specific. Ray mentions how he overheated during his time in war, completely blanking out only to awaken to Lydia clinging on to him, but not wanting to lose control of his engram anymore. Ray now constantly seals away his powers with a chrono lock to prevent overheating. Ray says he can't use sorcery in fear of hurting others. Combined with the fact that he's taken many lives in the past, Ray understands if his friends no longer wish to speak to him. But suddenly Amelia reaches out a helping hand. Having heard his cry for help, Amelia, Evie, Elisa, and Clarissa all accept Ray for the person he is today, bringing a smile to Ray's face as he's grateful for the family that sacrificed so much for him. That night, Ray detects Albert sneaking into his room, surprised to hear Albert has come to apologize for his shortcomings. Seeing Albert in need of some inspiration, Ray inspires Albert to become stronger by not spreading hate, both agreeing to be friends moving forward. The next day, Abby announces that since Professor Helena had left their school, their new replacement professor will be Carol Caroline herself, something that stuns Ray along with his peers. Following Amelia in her bubble bath, she thinks back on how heroic Ray was, having the strength of a grand sorcerer. When Amelia compares herself to Ray, she hates that she isn't as amazing as Ray, but as she finishes up, she wonders how she can charm Ray. Back in class, Carol goes over the Magic Chevalier, reminding everyone that the sword tournament is between the 3 sorcery academies, where the first years will fight in their own rookie bracket whilst the second and third years fight in the main tournament. Normally 16 students are picked from each academy, but since Rebecca Bradley from their academy won last year, their academy gets to elect 6 students instead of 5. Carol utters that their overall academy is the best, whilst Diam Academy specializes in combat and Marecross specializes in sorcery research. As Carol wraps up the class, Ray immediately visits Abby, demanding to know why Carol is teaching at their school. Abby says having Carol around will be safer for their school. Plus, Carol has integrated into the school perfectly, but Ray says Carol's true personality is what he despises. At that moment, Ray realizes that Carol is behind him, dashing away, but Carol winds up catching and embracing Ray. Later that day, Clarice and Ray watch the students training their skills as usual, but Clarice finds it weird that Ray is able to identify and predict who will win before a duel ends. With a crowd forming around Amelia and her sparring partner, Ray immediately notices something is wrong with Amelia's expression. Even after winning her duel, Amelia seems lost in thought. Flashing back, Amelia's father, Claude Rose, had ordered Amelia to win no matter what, asking Amelia to never lose to Ariane Algren, especially since their family title is on the line. Choosing to speak with Rebecca and Dina, Ray hears that Ariane is also from the 3 great families and is on par, if not stronger than Amelia is currently. With Rebecca promising to strive for first place again, we cut to Amelia facing off against Albert, easily qualifying first amongst the rookies while Albert himself places second. Seeing Amelia fixated on not letting everyone down, Ray works through the night using the book Lydia gave him, only to confront Amelia the next evening. Knowing that Amelia has been too hard on herself, Ray hears that Amelia fears her rival Ariane is stronger than her, but Ray says he could train Amelia in the month they have left. Seeing a chance to grow stronger, Amelia hears that she'll be partaking in the Ainsworth boot camp that Ray has been through, but as we flash back, we see Amelia reminisce on a more simpler time when she first met Ariane. Having been the same age, Ariane and Amelia naturally grew close, even both promising to stay together forever. Sadly, when their fathers had asked them to spar one day, Ariane humiliated Amelia in front of everyone, causing them to grow distant from each other. But Amelia admits that it was herself that let her noble privilege get the better of her, and henceforth she must win to prove she is worthy of her noble title. The next day, Amelia suits up for the boot camp, only to run into Ray, who has donned the disguise of an instructor. For Amelia's first task, Amelia is to lap the school, then enter and leave the Kafka forest unharmed without any body enhancements, something Amelia thinks is impossible. Luckily, Ray sets the standard by reminding Amelia to not rely on her sorcery always, both wrapping up the 20 kilometers, only for Amelia to promise to continue tomorrow. Although Amelia is exhausted in her classes, we see Amelia soldier on with Ray's assigned push-ups, pull-ups, and various exercises, always ending the day collapsing in her bed out of exhaustion. One night, Amelia dreams of herself chasing after Ariane, but having fallen, her friend Elisa comforts her with her breast, only for Clarissa to reassure Amelia everything is fine. When Ray himself appears in Amelia's dreams, Amelia suddenly awakens to Ray ordering her to get ready in 1 minute. But when Ray prepares to wait for Amelia outside, Ray is confronted by Rebecca and Dina. Apologizing for the loud noises, Ray tries to charm his way out of an argument. But upon seeing Amelia trying to sneak away, Ray locks onto Amelia, chasing after her. The next day, Ray realizes Amelia has run off again, but seeing Albert alone on a bench, Ray asks how Albert is doing. Albert asks how he can get stronger, voicing his fears of remaining weak for the rest of his life. But with a simple glance, Ray reassures Albert that he's definitely matured and grown stronger from when they first met. With Elisa helping Clarissa calm her stress from studying so much, we see Ray asking the girls if they've seen Amelia. But when Ray hears that girls have no idea where Amelia is, Ray has no choice but to don his mask and activate a school-wide search skill. Having located Amelia's hiding spot, Ray demands to know why Amelia is skipping training, dragging her outside, and refusing to let go until they've started training. Needing backup, Ray asks his masculine club members to help form a cheering squad for Amelia, something that pumps up the boys as they all agree to cheer on a fellow peer. As Rex hands Ray the item he had asked for, we cut to the next morning where Evie is awoken from his sleep, weirded out to see someone leaving his room. With Clarice and Elisa cheering on Amelia's morning training, they all notice a strange girl cheering Amelia on, only to cut to Dina and Rebecca also running into the strange girl wearing Dime Academy's uniform. Revealed to have been Ray with his female disguise, he sets his sights on infiltrating Dime Academy to gather intel. But having snuck around school in a box, Ray suddenly runs into a young girl crying for her big sister. As Ray and the little girl head through the academy, we see that Ray, under the alias of Lily White, is helping Tiana Algren find her sister. But having finally made it to where Ariane Algren is, Ariane invites Ray for some tea. Getting straight to the point, Ariane utters that she knows Ray isn't from their academy. Surprised to hear Ray reveal he is a man from Arnold Academy, Ariane immediately recognizes Ray as the ordinary with exceptional talent, something Ray wished was more secretive. But seeing the chance to repay Ray for helping Tiana, Ariane agrees to have a spar with Ray. As they both ready Wooden's swords for their duel, Ariane makes the first move, running in close for consecutive blows only to erect a lightning beam that severs Ray's wooden sword. With Ray conceding the duel, we see Tiana leaving for now, only for Ray to accidentally charm Ariane with his compliments. Before Ray leaves, he reveals that he has been training Amelia to defeat Ariane. But Ariane is relieved to hear Amelia has found friends and is working hard. As the sun begins to set, Ray suddenly spots a white-haired girl running with tears in her eyes. But upon seeing the girl trip, Ray rushes to save her. Immediately falling in love, Maria Bradley introduces herself to Ray, but Ray recognizes Maria to be Rebecca's younger sister, both promising to reunite when Maria enrolls in Dime Academy, believing Ray is still Lily. Having returned to his normal body the next day, Ray finally decides to take his friends to meet Lydia, all introducing themselves one at a time. First, Evie gains Lydia's approval, seeing how masculine he is. Next, Elisa catches Lydia's eyes, seeing how adorably curvy she is. But having met her role model, Elisa manages to get Lydia to sign one of her books. Moving on to Clarissa, she's amazed that Lydia knows of her dream to be a hunter, inspired to hear Lydia herself is a platinum hunter. Finally is Amelia, but Lydia asks to privately chat with Amelia, all whilst Carla reports to Ray that the Empire's Angels of Death, the Grim Reapers, have started to make their move, suspicious seeing as it's almost time for the Magic Chevalier. Back with Amelia, she hears that Ray has been writing to Lydia asking for advice on how to deal with Amelia's poor mood, but Amelia hears that Lydia had taught Ray to be even stronger than Lydia herself, but Ray still lacked a human heart. Lydia is happy to report that Ray was quite lifeless when they found him, but having gone through war and ever since joining the academy, Ray has grown so much by opening up to everyone, something Lydia recommends Amelia do as well. especially if she wants to grow stronger. Having returned to their usual training, Ray is proud to bestow onto Amelia her final exam for the Ainsworth boot camp, offering to grant Amelia a badge of completion if she manages to cut down the rose placed on his heart. Seeing no better time than the present to show off her hard work, Amelia dashes forth only to cut to the beginning of the Magic Chevalier, where Abby gives an inspiring speech to pump up the crowd and fighters. When Amelia heads to her changing room, she runs into Ariane, both agreeing to meet in the finals. With most of the fights finishing up quick, we cut to the semi-finals of the rookie bracket where Dina and Carol are commentating, giving introductions for Amelia and her opponent from Marecross Academy, Shine Gerard. Seeing as Abby will be the referee for the match, she reminds the fighters that someone is eliminated if they're pushed out of the ring or has their rose on their chest shattered. As both fighters ready their blades, Gerard rushes in for the first move, watching as Amelia flawlessly leaps over his heavy blade. But before Gerard can follow up with another attack, Amelia detonates a fire trap she had set up, burning Gerard's rose. Moving on to the next fight, we see Ray giving Albert some final words of encouragement, having been assigned to face off against Ariane herself. As the duel starts, both fighters rush each other only to exchange equal blows. But as the fight ramps up, Ariane manages to blow Albert back. Impressed Albert has yet to concede. Refusing to give up, Albert rushes Ariane once more, managing to disarm Ariane. But having been forced to empower her fist with lightning, Ariane halts Albert's blade, following up by knocking Albert out of the arena, ending the duel. As Amelia and the crowd admire Ariane's amazing strength, we see Ray heading somewhere, all whilst a mysterious figure watches him. Heading through the underground tunnels, Ray suddenly detects a strange presence behind him, but as he turns to face it, he only notices a strange acid left behind. Suddenly seeing Rex appear, Ray is escorted to meet up with Lydia, Carla, Abby, and Carol, but wonders why there are people watching over them. Carla reveals that the people around them are the intelligence agency that serves Lydia. This includes Rex himself, Carla's younger brother. With Lydia and Carol fighting, Abby states that the Grim Reapers are planning to kidnap the daughters of the noble families, prompting Rex and Ray to agree to stay vigilant. As Lydia gives Ray permission to use the thing they discussed, we cut to later that night, where Ray swears to ensure Amelia's match proceeds perfectly, all whilst Amelia is seen curled up. The next day, we see Rebecca advancing to the finals in the main bracket, but as Ray and Evie admire Rebecca's skills, they suddenly hear that Elisa and Clarissa had failed to retrieve Amelia from her room, fearing that Amelia is in need of help. With Lucas Forrest finishing his match in a mere 2 seconds, Ray suddenly detects something unique coming from the second-year Lucas. But as we cut to later that night, we see Ariane training hard. Greeted by Tiana and her father Vokard Algren, Algren gets excited to see Ariane's match the next day. As Evie and Ray train hard throughout the night, Evie asks Ray to go check on Amelia, immediately heading to tell Amelia what is on his mind. Having appeared in front of Amelia's doors, Ray reveals that he was too scared to fully listen to Amelia's heart, but this time Ray offers to hear everything Amelia has to say. Convincing Amelia to let him in, Ray hears that Amelia has been playing the part of a noble daughter all this time. But Amelia also curses at herself for sulking even though Ray has had a much harder past than hers. Ray reminds Amelia to not compare herself to others, but Amelia cries that she can't help it, especially since she knows that she can't defeat Ariane. Breaking down crying, Amelia cries that she has been trapped her entire life. But choosing to calm Amelia down, Ray utters that Amelia can choose to live for herself moving forward. Heeding Ray's advice, Amelia asks to stay by Ray's side forever, managing to fall asleep with Ray by her side. But as Ray thinks back to the Ainsworth final exam, he was surprised to see Amelia manifest a new power to pass his final exam. With the big day arriving, we see Amelia and Ariane's father watching over the match, only for Ray to report to his party that Amelia has recovered from her despair. Ray hears that Clarice is busy organizing the festival, but as Ray heads to give Amelia a final pep talk, we cut to Clarice running through the tunnels only for a mysterious figure to tail her. Following Ray, he's seen checking on Amelia's condition, even giving Amelia a hug to fully pump her up. Cutting to Rex, he's seen noticing some flashes of light in the distance, instantly heading over to report to Ray that Clarice, along with 8 other students, have suddenly gone missing. As Ray offers to search below, Rex heads to spread the news to Lydia, all whilst Amelia and Ariane's duel finally begins. The moment the duel starts, Ariane chooses to throw away her blade, immediately infusing her fist with magic only to fire off a projectile at Amelia. Having distracted Amelia, Ariane dashes behind Amelia only to land a devastating punch that sends Amelia onto the ground. But luckily, Amelia has managed to withstand the blow. Carol utters that Ariane's enhancement spell is a completely original spell, but as Ariane rushes in for another strike, she manages to knock Amelia to the edge of the ring. Rushing in for the finishing blow, Ariane is suddenly blown back when Amelia unleashes a burst of explosive butterflies, revealing her new and improved self, all whilst Ray is seen exploring the underground tunnels. Managing to discover Claris and the other kidnapped students, Ray confirms that Claris is alright, but out of nowhere, a wide interference spell locks down the area. Revealed to be the work of the Grim Reapers, Ray hurriedly flees with Claris on his shoulder, but seeing no other way out, Ray unleashes his true power. Donning his Ice Blade Sorcerer title, Ray begins fighting against the Grim Reapers, but having been consumed by one of the Reaper's spells, Ray focuses up only to dispel the magic blocking his vision. During Amelia and Ariane's duel, they're both surprised to see their spells suddenly negated. Something Carol knows must be the work of Ray. Seeing the Reapers attempting to flee, Ray freezes the ground with a wave of his hands, managing to freeze all the Reapers as well, only to leave with Claris, handing over the cleanup duty to Rex. Back with Amelia, we see that she's been able to keep up with Ariane's movements, but having gotten bored of their exchange, Ariane chooses to unveil her trump card. Immediately erupting with lightning, Ariane is seen surging with power, horrifying Amelia as she tries swarming Ariane with her explosive butterflies. Sadly, Ariane manages to surpass Amelia's cast time, easily dealing blows onto Amelia, all whilst maneuvering around Amelia's explosions, only to land a torrential punch onto Amelia. As the crowd watches in awe, Ariane asks Amelia to forfeit already, but when Amelia tries to get up, her body freezes from fear. At that moment, Ray appears crying for Amelia to get up, giving Amelia the courage to surpass her limits only to boldly declare that Ariane can no longer reach her. With Amelia unveiling her butterfly effect spell, Ariane rushes forth with her full strength, but before she can pummel Amelia, she magically misses her target. When Ariane tries to land another strike on Amelia, Ariane winds up missing several times more. Something Carol explains is a rare type of spell that manipulates causality. Carol notices that Amelia's spell is able to redirect Ariane's punch at will, making it extremely difficult to land a hit onto Amelia, but Carol utters that it's not entirely impossible. Refusing to give in, Ariane is redirected into an explosion, but sadly Amelia's engram begins to deteriorate, leading Amelia to begin to bleed. Although Amelia begins bleeding profusely, she refuses to lose, inspiring Ariane to continue fighting as well, both exchanging equal blows. As the crowd watches in anticipation, the girls' duel reaches its climax, resulting in Amelia's victory as Ariane awakens on Amelia's lap. Ariane takes the chance to voice how proud she is to see Amelia grow so strong, something that brings Amelia to tears as she states it was thanks to her friends that she got strong. Amelia also admits that Ariane herself convinced her to grow stronger, something Ariane appreciates as she feared Amelia would hate her for letting her nobility pull them apart. But as Ariane hugs Amelia, Amelia is reminded of the promise they had to always be friends forever. With the duel ending, Amelia is officially crowned the champion of the rookie bracket, something that garners applause from everyone in the stand, including Claude himself. Later that day, Tiana and Vocard greet Claude, prompting both men to proudly boast about their daughters. As Ray checks up on Amelia in the infirmary, he's relieved to see Amelia has been patched up, but Amelia suddenly gets embarrassed having relied so much on Ray to make it through the tournament. Amelia does ask if Ray knew what her powers were when Ray was assessing her, but Ray says he only knew that Amelia's hard work would eventually pay off, especially now that Amelia had created her own original spell. Having recovered substantially, Amelia is invited by the others to watch Rebecca's final match in the main bracket, exciting Amelia as a weight has been lifted off her chest. With Rebecca being assigned to face off against Luca Forst, Ray suddenly notices Maria observing Rebecca's match from above. As Rebecca's father, Bruno Bradley, watches the fight, we see both Rebecca and Lucas draw their swords. But suddenly Rebecca activates a foresight skill. Reading Lucas's movements, Rebecca anticipates a certain strike, but countering with a secret technique of his own, Lucas obscures Rebecca's vision, ultimately winning the bout. With everyone speechless, we see Lucas passing by Ray, uttering that he knows Ray is the current Ice Blade Sorcerer, but Ray is more impressed to see Lucas is the current Peerless Blade Sorcerer. Lucas states he wants to show Ray that the Peerless are the strongest of the Grand Sorcerers, but sadly due to Ray's overheating problem, Lucas says he'll return next year to settle their score. Cutting over to Carol, we see her wheeling Lydia underground, all whilst Abby guides them to where the Grim Reapers are being held. Taking charge, Carol casts a charming spell on the Reapers, ultimately managing to control the Reapers with her voice alone, something that freaks out Abby and Lydia, seeing as Carol really is the grand spellbinding sorcerer. When Carol orders the Reapers to reveal everything they're scheming, their heads suddenly burst before they can say anything, only to cut over to the closing ceremony of the tournament. As Lydia joins Dina and Carol at the announcer booth, we follow Abby giving her closing remarks on the tournament, only to cut to several days later where Ray suggests their class hold a maid cafe for their school's cultural festival. Sadly, Ray's noble peers refuse to dress up as servants. But as we flash back to yesterday afternoon, we see that Amelia was the one that wants to hold a maid cafe. Having known that their class would reject such an idea, Amelia had instructed Ray to explain the purpose of a maid, plus Amelia wants to alter the maid's skirt length to ensure their class gets maximum attention. In the present, Ray manages to convince some to consent to the maid cafe. But when Carol reveals a maid dress of her own, she helps seal the deal on the maid cafe. Having wrapped up class, Amelia thanks Ray and Carol for playing along, but out of nowhere Dina rushes to report that Rebecca has gotten engaged. Following Bruno, we see him signing a contract with Evan Bernstein, promising to take good care of Rebecca. At night, we see a beast-like man, Paratorogo, the glutton, absorbing the essence from a civilian, only for a cloaked figure to retrieve the brain of the victim. As the victim's body moves on its own, the cloaked figure states that it needs the vessel of Rebecca Bradley to enact its revenge. But as we cut to Rebecca, we see her bleeding mysteriously. The next day, Ray chooses to visit Rebecca whilst on her gardening duties. Shy at first, but thanks Ray for coming to see her after her engagement was announced. But as Ray shakes Rebecca's hand, he suddenly senses something is off with her. Back with the girls, Ray listens in on Amelia's suggestions for the maid dress, having assigned Elisa to help craft them, especially interested to see how Elisa would fit in one. When Elisa tries to talk her way out of having to dress as a maid, Amelia continues to persuade Elisa, but when Ray joins in, he manages to charm Elisa into giving in, something that annoys Amelia. Returning to the classroom, Ray is surprised to see his classmates so pumped up to set up the maid cafe, but as Ray reports that Elisa will be creating the maid uniforms, the entire class erupts into cheers as Albert reminds Ray that everyone loves maids. Needing to visit the student council to have his maid cafe idea approved, Ray manages to convince Dina to accept his maid cafe, but Ray is more curious as to why the remainder of the student council is missing. Dina sadly reveals that the secretary of the student council, Cornea, was apparently meant to marry Evan, but seeing as Rebecca is now engaged to Evan, it makes things awkward. Seeing as Rebecca stole Cornea's fiancé, the other student council members have chosen to abandon Rebecca, leaving only Rebecca and Dina to handle the student council work. Unable to hold back his frustrations, Ray offers to help Rebecca and Dina, something the girls immediately accept, needing the extra manpower. As Ray leaves for the day, he suddenly hears Dina calling out to him, wanting Ray to investigate why the prestigious Bradley family has given their daughter to Evan Bernstein. Needing more intel, Ray chooses to visit Lydia and Carla, asking if there is anything that the House of Bernstein could have that entices the Bradleys. When Carla reports that the Bernsteins don't even compare to the three great noble families, Ray gets more suspicious, prompting Lydia to order Carla to investigate Rebecca's engagement. Changing topics, Lydia hears that Ray is holding a maid cafe for the school festival, jealous that Ray loves maids, especially Carla's maid outfit. When Lydia offers to wear a maid dress of her own, Ray reminds Lydia that she is nothing but a gorilla swiftly apologizing as Lydia and Carla state they'll be attending the school festival. Cutting over to Rebecca, we see her continue to bleed from her eyes while showering, suddenly picturing a war-torn battlefield with Ray as the protagonist. But as Rebecca leaves the shower to look at herself in the mirror, she notices the glow from her eyes suddenly fade. At that moment, Maria appears to check on Rebecca, suddenly asking about the blood Rebecca had wiped. Brushing the blood aside, Rebecca heads to bed, but when Maria asks if Rebecca is okay with her wedding, Rebecca coldly utters that she must uphold her duties as the eldest in the family. Having returned to her room, Rebecca curls up into a ball, remembering a time when Maria would get bullied for her unorthodox white hair. As Maria grew up, she started adding piercings to her body, something her mother disapproved of, but Maria thought she needed to rebel, seeing as she could never be like Rebecca. When Maria heard of Rebecca's engagement, she confronted Rebecca about the details, but Rebecca coldly shut herself off and ordered Maria to leave her alone. It was that day when Maria ran into Ray in his lily disguise, but as we cut to Ray, we see him and the boys admire their work over the past few days. With the girls donning their maid outfits, Ray can't help but compliment Wanda and her friends, turning to Amelia, only to utter her praise. Seeing Elisa shy, Ray convinces Elisa to be more confident, but Amelia does point out how jealous she is that Ray has volunteered to help out Rebecca. At that moment, Clarice reveals her spooky costume, having been assigned to do a haunted house for her class. As Amelia adores Clarice's outfit, we cut to Abby and Carol, happy to hear that Ray has united his class. But following Rebecca, we see her leaving school alone, only to run into Ray, who has been waiting to walk her home. Escorting Rebecca through town, Rebecca utters that she'll be moving out of the academy after the cultural festival, asking how Ray's preparations for the cultural festival are going. Ray reports that his class has slowly begun to change for the better, but suddenly Rebecca stiffens up, seeing as Evan has come to pick up Rebecca. As Ray introduces himself to Evan, he leaves Rebecca to Evan, but out of nowhere Rex appears, heading to report his findings to Lydia and the others. Rex reports that there are no humans living in the Burstein Manor, as it has been abandoned for several years. Seeing as Evan Burstein has been keeping such a secret for several years, Lydia deduces that Evan must be after Rebecca's Sorcerer's Eye and is someone that belongs to eugenics. Elsewhere, we see the cloaked figure chatting with Para, revealing himself to be Evan. Evan utters that he'll have Rebecca awaken and help him open the gates of Akasha. It's only then when Evan will have fulfilled his promise to Lise. Following Rebecca, we see her shedding tears, reminded by Evan that he'll help her father and sister reach the pinnacle of the three great noble families. But in exchange, Rebecca must do what Evan asks. Sinking into another dream, Rebecca sees the moment when Ray witnessed Howard's passing, having needed Lydia to drag him away from Howard's corpse, as Rebecca wonders the next day if her dreams about Ray were real. Needing a break, Dina introduces Maria to Ray, flustering Maria as Ray comments on Maria's white hair and bloodshot eyes. Maria offers to help Ray with anything involving Rebecca, worrying that Rebecca is sacrificing herself for others again. But as Ray reassures Maria that they'll all save Rebecca, Rebecca is seen spying on their conversation. That night, Rebecca writhes in jealousy, having accidentally misinterpreted Ray's conversation with Maria earlier as flirting. But as we follow Ray, he's seen telling Evie about Luna Ether's latest love story novel. Apparently, the story follows a demon girl who falls in love with a human, slowly learning to love and feel emotions. But as the girl slowly becomes more human, her lover gets drunk off the girl's demonic power, ultimately leaving the girl to search for more power, but the demon girl seems to be awaiting his return. With the cultural preparations flying by, we see Ray continue to help out at the student council. But as Ray sleeps for the night, we see him on the anniversary of Howard's passing, helping Carol hold back her tears. On that rainy day, Ray suddenly notices Rebecca calling out to him, but before he can interact with Rebecca, he suddenly awakens. As Ray wipes away some tears of blood, he suits up for his morning jog, only to meet up with Rebecca for a chat. Seeing as the cultural festival starts today, Rebecca hesitates to ask about Ray's past, but having held herself back, we see the festival kicking off bright and early. With Tiana and Ariane visiting the festival, we see Maria drawn to a particular maid cafe, but as Amelia and Elisa serve up an egg omelet for Tiana and Ariane, Arian wonders where Ray is. At the same time, we see Ray has donned his Lily persona, horrifying everyone as they begin to feel strange seeing Ray in a maid costume. As Clarice has fun scaring people with her ghost costume, we cut to Abby and Carol on patrol, all whilst Ray services Maria as a maid. Seeing Ray pull off the maid persona perfectly, Arian fears she has stumbled onto something forbidden. We cut to later that day, where Ray and Rebecca are touring the festival together, having been suggested by Dina herself. Shy at first, Rebecca lets herself be swept up by the festival, enjoying her time with Ray. But as the day comes to an end, Rebecca brings up the fireworks that are scheduled for the closing of tomorrow's festival day, running off before she can ask Ray to join her. But as we follow Maria admiring her photo with Lily, she is suddenly confronted by Lieselot Eden, who utters that Maria's sister will pass away soon, but she can help Maria save her. At the same time, Ray hears from Lydia that Rebecca is scheduled to die, but having joined their meeting, Bruno asks if Ray could help save his daughter. As night falls, we see Evie reminding Ray to rely on his friends, but all whilst this happens, Evan is seen marking tomorrow as the day when Cruz awakens, exciting Para as he wants to devour the Iceblade Sorcerer. Elsewhere, we see Rebecca in so much pain, having seen visions of Ray passing and Maria crying, completely bleeding out from her face. The next morning, Rebecca catches Ray on his morning jog, only to ask for Ray to take care of Maria when she's gone, something Ray finds ominous. With the second festival day starting, we see Lydia calling for Carol and Abby to be ready for what is to come. But as Maria asks Ray to give her courage, we cut to Rebecca meeting up with Evan only to be transported to the training grounds of their school. Seeing as it's time, Ray runs off, leaving Evie to explain the situation to the others. As Evan erects a barrier around his position, he declares that he'll begin to break Rebecca. But over in a nearby forest, we see Paradorogo and another hooded figure have called for monsters to rally. At that moment, we see Ray in his Lily persona slaying the creatures. But having been swarmed by the enemy, Ray suddenly is saved by Amelia's butterfly effect. Spotting his friends have come to assist him, we cut back to Rebecca, who notices Maria has come to confront them. As Ray and his party take turns cleaning up the gathered monsters, we see Para sneaking up from behind to attack Amelia, but Ray intercepts the strike. Since they're low on time, the hooded figure sends Para elsewhere, but as Ray's friends choose to hold the fort down where they are, Ray sheds his disguise only to chase after Para. Apparently, the Bradley family have been heavily cursed by Cruz, and is a curse that occurs every 100 years with Rebecca being its next victim. Ray hears that since Rebecca can't control her sorcerer's eye, she may pass very soon. And it's due to Rebecca's Cruz curse that led to Maria being born as albino, and Maria herself may also be cursed. Before Maria can say anything, Para joins the conversation, followed by the hooded figure who reveals himself to be the real Evan, whereas Morse is the name of the Evan leading Rebecca around. Sadly, Evan cries for Lise to reveal herself, all watching as Morse transforms into Lieselot, pissing Evan off as he calls for a shadowy hand to grab a hold of Lieselot. Evan demands to know why Lieselot has been parading around as himself for the past several years, refusing to listen to anything Lieselot says, as Evan cries he'll ultimately obtain power once he reaches Akasha. Before Evan can awaken Cruz, a sudden burst of flame erupts from Rebecca, but Lieselot intervenes, knocking Rebecca back, only to trap Evan in a different realm. Lieselot is glad to see Maria has made up her mind, but right on cue Ray appears, only to stand off against Para. Having recognized Para as the sorcerer that devours other sorcerers' engrams, Para attempts to devour Ray's engram as well, but suddenly runs into a wall erected by Lieselot. Speaking with Ray for a bit, Lieselot reveals herself to be the sorcerer for fabrication, making Ray realize that Lieselot was the one that set everything up. Lieselot reassures Ray that Lydia and the others are already aware of her schemes, uttering that she plans on having Rebecca overheat, and it's then when Ray must seal away her powers with his Chronos lock. Lieselot says Ray is allowed to use any means necessary to save Rebecca, explaining the contract Lieselot formed with Bruno, but at that moment Para breaks through Lieselot's wall. As Ray unleashes his true powers, we see Lieselot slip into the realm she had trapped Evan in, only for Ray to stay on the defensive as Para strikes shatters blades. As Para amps up his strength, We follow Lieselot, who reminds Evan he can never attain her power, but Evan could care less as he declares he'll slay Lieselot. Taking out a needle, Evan injects his brain, causing his body to overheat and surge with power. In his monstrous form, Evan reaches towards Lieselot, but as Lieselot freezes Evan in place, she calls for a beam of light to consume Evan. With Evan completely defeated by Lieselot, he asks if Lieselot is the strongest sorcerer to live, but sadly Lieselot reveals that the Ice Blade Sorcerer is the strongest to ever live, having the capabilities to rule the world. Following Amelia and the others, we see that they've managed to slay the horde of monsters Evan left for them. But before they can reflect on how strong they've gotten, the monster corpses revive with a darker hue. Before Amelia and the team can be swarmed with dark projectiles, hundreds of ice blades intercept the projectiles, revealed to be the work of Lydia, who has come with reinforcements. Carol reveals that they had to slay the monsters in other areas of the academy first, but as we cut over to Rex, we see him admire the battlefield once Lydia and her team had passed by. As Carla and Abby draw their weapons, Carla leads with a lightning strike that shreds the surrounding monsters. Following up, Abby brandishes fire spells that incinerate the nearby monsters, only for Carol to hypnotize the monsters into enduring an explosion. As the closing act, Lydia unveils a heavenly ice blade, sending it crashing down towards the monsters, something that makes the students speechless as they all wonder how Ray is doing. Having managed to hold off Para's onslaught, Ray asks for Para to stop holding back, leading Para to unveil his ultimate trump card. Having enhanced his body, Para sends a smoke-like creature to devour Ray. But as Ray struggles to dodge, we see Maria berating Rebecca for always hiding her true feelings and sacrificing herself for others. In mere moments, Para manages to close the gap between him and Ray, ramming Ray against a wall only to pick him up by his neck. Having seen enough, Ray overheats and swells with power, converting his blue blades into red ones, only to surprise Para when his blades begin freezing over Para's body. Annoyed, Para attempts to shatter Ray's blade, but this time Ray's swords freeze Para's fist. As Ray's ice infects Para's entire body, Para admits defeat as he is concealed in ice only for Ray to collapse for battle. Before Rebecca can check on Ray, Maria reminds Rebecca that the massacre is all her fault, slapping Rebecca when she says she did everything for Maria and her family. No longer holding back her feelings, Rebecca wrestles Maria to the ground, slapping Maria only to cry that their parents despise the way Maria acts. When Maria yells that she wishes she was never born, Rebecca begins to break down crying, reminding Maria that she always wants Maria to be her little sister. But at that moment, Rebecca's eyes begin to glow. As a bright beam of light pierces the night sky, we see Lieselot return with Evan's corpse, uttering that she had seduced Evan in the past, but it was ultimately her fault that Evan sought out unimaginable power. Seeing Luna Ether's tale of the demon girl and Lieselot, Ray rushes to be by Rebecca's side, all whilst Amelia and the others arrive on the scene. Seeing as Rebecca is beginning to overheat, Ray courageously marches towards the eye of the storm, asking Maria to stand back as Ray confronts Rebecca. Seeing Rebecca regretful for all the mean things she said to Maria, Ray reassures Rebecca that everything will be all right, giving her a kiss only to seal away Rebecca's powers with Kronos Lock. As the beam of light dissipates from the night sky, we see Rex report that Ray has saved Rebecca and Maria, something that pleases Bruno. As the fireworks show approaches, we see Rebecca eagerly awaiting Ray's arrival. But seeing as Amelia has arrived first, the two girls begin bragging about how close they are to Ray. With both girls agreeing to fight for Ray till the very end, we see Elisa and Clarissa asking to fight for Ray's love as well. But as Ray arrives, we see the night sky filled with hundreds of fireworks. The season ends with Ray visiting Howard's grave, recounting the amazing memories he's had since he joined the academy, having chosen to bring his friends along to mourn Howard's passing. That evening, we see Arian asking for Ray to join her in the upcoming Magic's War, all whilst Ray's little sister, Stella White, wishes for the day her brother returns to her.